Stand by for action.
Drop your guns, everyone. And remember, I mean business.
What's your name, boy?
Joe 90.
An unusual name. What are you doing here?
I'm an agent for the World Intelligence Network.
Satisfactory. Most satisfactory.
Look, there are 600 people up there with about 40 minutes to live. Now, you can't help them, but I believe we can. Now, what's it gonna be?
It would seem that this Captain Scarlet is now indestructible. This presents us with the clear and exciting expectation that he will become our greatest asset in the fight against the mist rounds.
If anything else goes wrong, I want you to be ready to act immediately.
Well, that was no ordinary breakdown. We've got to get up there and help them, but fast.
Thunderbirds Are Go.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Hello and welcome to Puppets Go Boom! My name is Arun.
My name is Patricia.
And today we're going to be talking about Thunderbirds Are Go. And this is the Thunderbirds movie you'd think when we got into this era of Thunderbirds that, this would be like the height. This would be like, it can't go any, it can go further and higher than this. And actually, this turned out to be a massive bomb.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Thunderbirds Are Go was the first out of two movies that they released around the 1960s. So this came out shortly after they were finished with the series, but before Captain Scarlet. So that's the reason why we're doing this before we do the Captain Scarlet podcast. So for those who are wondering, where's the Captain Scarlet podcast? Well, we're talking about this first because it technically came out before Captain Scarlet. So sorry for all those people who are waiting. You'll have to wait until next week.
Yeah, I mean, this was like an interesting kind of maybe transition, I guess you could say, to Captain Scarlet, and the reason I say that is because when you look at the fact that we are going off to Mars, which, for Thunderbirds is a pretty big thing, because, they've got this whole Zero X mission. By the way, the way that they did the whole Zero X, rocket, putting the rocket together and everything like that, that was quite a spectacle. And I probably imagine there's a lot of Japanese audiences that probably would have marveled, I think, the way that it was all put together. And I probably imagine it would be interesting to see what it was like on the big screen, because it would have been pretty epic to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, the reason why we got the Thunderbirds movie in the first place was because Lou Grade felt that this was the next evolution for Thunderbirds. So, after they finished Series 1, he talked over to Jerry Anderson and Sylvia Anderson saying, we need to go to the next level. Let's make a big, epic movie like never seen before. And so, they went all out. As we saw in the documentary, there was a huge, massive push and promotion. There were so many toys that were released. And also, during the movie's opening premiere, they actually had Lady Penelope's vehicle pull up on the red carpet, and you had Jerry and Sylvia Anderson basically like promoting the movie. So they made a massive deal out of this.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that's as big as it probably got.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it's. I think when we were looking at the documentary, I think this was at the time. I think even Lou Grade, I think, was also looking at it and saying, this is starting to lose its steam. We need to move on to the next big project, which I think is a bit of a shame, really, because Thunderbirds, the TV show, I think still had a lot to give and had a lot more possibilities. If it had run into dare I say, if it had run into 5 seasons, I think who knows, maybe we would have probably had more character development. We probably would have more ships to have a look at. We had a lot more effects and things like that. So I think, if anything, it was just kind of sad to see that Thunderbirds was cut down in its prime, I think, in that. But I think they probably went, a bit too far when they said, yeah, we're going to do the Thunderbirds movie. And if anything, when we're going to be looking at this discussion, I think I can obviously say that this probably should have been made more for TV, really, than it should have been, for the movies. Because what's the one joke that they do in the Simpsons movie is I can't believe we're going to watch something that we can watch on TV for free. I could probably imagine there was a lot of people maybe at that time that thought that.
Yeah, I mean, especially since you have to remember, this was the 1960s. You didn't see a lot of TV shows being adapted into theatrical films. I mean, sure, today you would definitely see more of that, where you get to see, here's a popular TV show and let's make it into a movie. I mean, a lot of kids shows in the 90s and 2000s were prime examples of that. Rugrats, Hey Arnold, Teacher's Pet, Recess, the Powerpuff Girls. shows. There were so many theatrical movies based off of TV shows, and you could say that Thunderbirds was maybe one of the first ones that did it.
Yeah, and I think that well, mind you, I don't think it was the first one. I don't think because didn't the 1966 Batman didn't that also have a movie as well? And I think there's been also other theatrical versions of TV shows which obviously for probably good or bad reason did not do very well at the box office.
No, it didn't.
It's funny because it seems that people came to the conclusion that TV shows can't match the epicness, I think, of the big screen.
Yeah,
I don't think, and unfortunately, we probably didn't really learn that lesson until Nickelodeon scrapped all its Nickelodeon movies that it was going to do after the unfortunate failure of Hey the movie. But
and then we got SpongeBob movies for the next 20 years until, funny enough, next year is going to be the first time in a while that we're going to get another theatrical movie from Nickelodeon that isn't SpongeBob.
Exactly, yeah. So that's how much of a of disaster it left in his wrath, pretty much.
Yeah.
And well, anyway, going back to Thunderbirds, because that is the topic of our of our podcast, is that the idea is that the Zero X is going to be this first manned mission to Mars, and it's just going to be an interesting little thing that they're going to do before, obviously, they went to Captain Scarlet, and then obviously everything that happened in that podcast. Sorry, in that show, I guess you should say. The first attempt gets sabotaged, and so the spaceport have a look at what happened, and one person votes against doing a relaunch of the Zero X, and he basically just says that I don't believe that we can trust our security procedures because we've got a whole entire report saying that we can't trust them. So the call is made, interestingly, for international rescue to oversee the space mission, effectively, which is kind of cool because you would have thought, is this going to be Alan Tracy's time to shine? And it's you will obviously get obviously Alan Tracy in another podcast that we're going to talk about,
and in another podcast we'll be talking about
too. Yeah, but
they just seem to love using Alan Tracy as the protagonist in these Thunderbirds movies.
It seems to be funny enough, and also in the unfortunate other podcast that we're going to need to do. And by the way, we haven't seen that movie yet as of this podcast.
No, we haven't.
We're that. Well, I have, but she, Patricia hasn't. So
no.
It's going to be we're in for some fun. But anyway, I digress. And so the idea is that International Rescue this entire time has been a rescue organization. They listen out on Thunderbird 5 for any distress signals, and then they go out and do the rescue. And that effectively is every single episode, of Thunderbirds, effectively, give or take. But in this situation, Jeff Tracy is contacted personally by the spaceport to say that they want International Rescue's help to oversee the mission. And so a big debate actually happens in amongst the Tracy brothers and the family, because they're saying, well, wait a second, we don't just go out to oversee security for a mission, but Jeff Tracy, and I think this is actually a really good callback, really, because if you remember in the first episode, Jeff Tracy resonates on his time of being in space as being an astronaut, because that's what he originally started off with before he founded International Rescue. So he has a fondness, obviously, for traveling into space. So I imagine that that was actually a really good callback, really, saying that, Jeff will give a bye to this situation because he's been a spaceman himself. So, he is interested to see how far, Zero X can actually go into the Mars mission. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's the reason why he has a change of heart. And so, therefore, International Rescue assist with Zero X going into space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in the mixture, we have Alan, who wants to be treated a lot more seriously with the missions, where he feels that he is kind of like the underdog amongst all of his brothers. I mean, obviously, because he's the youngest, and he doesn't really get to go as much missions as he does, where, he does control Thunderbird 3, but it doesn't go into space that much compared to where John goes over to Thunderbird 5, even though that he and John switch between going over to Thunderbird 5, where they do the patrolling. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, he feels like he is completely overshadowed by Scott, Virgil, Gordon, and he wants to be treated a little bit more seriously.
Which I think, if in regards to production, the way that the fans anticipate, I think is probably correct. Because if you remember, Alan Tracy's the hothead in this whole thing. He's the Falco Lombardi of Star Fox, effectively. So, you can kind of understand where people are coming from when they says, we can't really trust you with this big responsibility yet, even though we blast you into space and we have you overlook, Thunderbird 5. That sort of like, continuity-wise doesn't really make all that much sense.
Yeah.
And but in regards to Alan's personality, you can sort of understand why, because he just flips off at like the latest thing. I bet he's probably the butt of every practical joke amongst the Tracy brothers. I bet if he actually is, isn't he? Because I think they recall one episode where they did pull a prank on him.
Yeah.
And so like I think that's so if anything, that makes a lot of sense, but then doesn't make sense at the same time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
But yeah, in the mixture, Alan is not going alone because Lady Penelope is joining along with him.
Yeah. That's really, besides going along with the Zero X, doing it. By the way, Zero X is a big, massive callback to Fireball XL5.
It is.
In this show. Like, it even does exactly the same things that it does. If it goes around, it has a little Fireball, Zero X Jr., I guess you could say, that goes on the ground and does that. I mean, like, there's the bits where all of a sudden we're introduced to, like, these, like, snake lizard things that come out of the rock and, like, blast fireballs at them, and that's supposed to be, like, an epic moment. But we kind of like go through that, but then we never recall them again.
No, we never did.
No, which is kind of strange, really, because it's like, why would you then bring them into this danger? And you would have thought, oh wow, I mean, is this going to be a case where they're all going to be captured by these alien creatures, and maybe Alan Tracy would be the one to go in Thunderbird 3, somehow fly all the way to Mars, and save the day or something like that. But no, it's just they end up in the situation, they get out of it, and they come back to Earth, and that's it. But this is the thing. This is where the movie is at its weakest point, because all you're really doing is just hearing like, dare I have to compare it, and I know this sounds really, really awful to say, I kind of compare it to Ratatouille in that movie, and the reason I say that is because the one thing that's really awful about that movie is just the overabundance of dialogue. Don't you agree with me on that? Like, it's just, they have to explain everything to everybody, which I probably imagine they just think, oh, well, Ratatouille's going to be for, like, a younger audience and, like, a stupid audience, I guess you could say. But, this is where, like, it's really dialogue heavy, that's what's going on here. Like, they're either around the pool talking about what's going on with the Zero X, they're either around the pool table or doing, playing, or around playing cards. And they're just talking about, like, oh, the Zero X did this today, the Zero X did that today. Oh, this happened today, this happened today. Where's the action? It's a Thunderbirds movie.
You're right, yeah. And also in the mixture, because, of course, this is the future, we need to also have a celebrity guest in here.
Oh, yeah. Here's Cliff Richard Jr., everybody.
Oh, God.
Yeah. We kind of get this weird music video, which I probably imagine, like, Cliff Richard probably just looked at and said, hey, this is going to be, me keeping me, the MTV of the future, so, they can stick this on MTV, and, that keeps me relevant.
It is, he's not even joking, because it is incredibly trippy. Mm-hmm. It is super, super trippy, where you have him singing and dancing. Oh, God, the dancing.
I do this in front of Patricia now because it just makes her burst out laughing. All the dance sequences in all these super animation movies are just hilarious. It's like, this is.
Oh, do the other one.
Oh, yeah. That's the one that Tintin did when she was dancing. Oh, God.
You know what? I'm going to do
I don't know what they were thinking putting those dance sequences in there.
I'm going to do a compilation of you imitating every single dance that's featured in a Super Mario Nation.
Oh, is that going on TikTok, is it?
I don't even know.
I don't even know. But, so, here's the thing. So, we have this whole thing, and then it turns out to be a dream, and you have, like, the mind to the gap, Alan, and he just falls into space, and then you have, like, Lady Penelope, like, cackling, like the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
Like,
what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, like, also, like, it does kind of make you a little bit sick as well, because you see him, like, falling back down to Tracy Island, and then you see him, he's falling out of bed. And that's about it, really. And so there's that instances. But then finally, we get back to what Thunderbirds should actually be about, and that is that they have to attempt to rescue the Zero X because they can't land the thing.
That's like what, like 10 minutes into the movie?
I mean, like, yeah, but like it's it pretty much is all rammed into like the final third. So like and so it's at the point where they can't get near the ship, and so what they have to do is that they have to winch Alan Tracy into, the Zero X to try and get them, into the safety module to get them out of it. And so don't get me wrong, watching it just go towards the ocean and saying, okay, I'm going to fire the retros to buy us some time, and just rev out the engines. It is a really gripping moment, if you're not really used to Thunderbirds all that much. So will they or won't they? Oh my god, it's coming very close, and then finally they get out, and Alan Tracy manages to land, in a field where he's picked up by Lady Penelope, and he finally gets his dream come true to actually go off to go out, have a date with Lady Penelope, which is kind of weird.
That is really weird, considering that he's already dating Tintin, and
well, actually no, he's not, because you remember in one of the final episodes of Thunderbirds, he admitted that I can't date anybody. I'm dedicated to International Rescue.
Oh, that's right.
So that's kind of weird, because it's sometimes he's with Tintin and other times they weren't. It's kind of like they were not making their minds up about whether they actually wanted to ship these two or not.
Yeah, that is really weird. It's kind of like the same thing would happen with Troy Tempest, in which it's who do you love? Do you love Atlanta or do you love Marina? I'm just focusing on my job.
Yeah, but it's insinuated that he has been with both. He's had a relationship with Atlanta, and he's had a relationship with Marina, and the same thing here with. I'm pretty sure we had a discussion about it in the last Thunderbirds podcast about where are they or are they not. And but it's I guess it's sort of kind of shown as a friendly relationship. In a way, it would have been better if it was portrayed oh hey, Lady Penelope knows how to have a good time, in the evening because she's very rich and can get into really good places, and Alan Tracy gets that privilege because before in the beginning of the movie he didn't, and so now he finally does it, and he's finally getting the dream come true, and he's finally getting to have a night out. Then so he has to wear a disguise in order to do that because he can't be recognized in public. But then he finds out that everybody else is currently with him as well, and so all wearing disguises. It's kind of oh yeah, and it's they try and put in a pretty nice message where it's Lady Penelope says, it's better to have your family around and not be by yourself, which are it's best not to be alone, which is an all right message, I guess you could say, but for it kind of feels like it's shoehorned in a little bit there, really. It's kind of, this is Alan Tracy when it's be respected amongst his peers, but then all of a sudden it's kind of oh no, and you shouldn't be on your own. You got to be around your family. It's what? It's yeah. So sadly, Thunderbirds Are Go is a bit all over the place, really. It's it doesn't know whether it's supposed to be a dialogue-driven thriller, or whether it's supposed to be an action movie, or whether it's supposed to be a thing about Alan Tracy going on his redemption, some sort of redemption arc, but then says he wants to be respected amongst his peers, but then all of a sudden he wants to be on his own. It's very confusing.
And not to mention,
I'm talking to someone who's a fan of Thunderbirds, by the way.
And as somebody who just recently became a fan of Thunderbirds, the movie starts off super, super slow. And then after a while, it gets really silly and confusing. And then it gets super slow again. And then, in the last 10 minutes, it starts feeling like Thunderbirds again. Yeah,
unfortunately, if I had to give Thunderbirds to somebody, I would basically say, unfortunately, as epic as the movie sounds, it's not really that epic. If anything, it's sort of confusing. So, if you're going to be introduced to Thunderbirds the first time, don't show them the movie first.
No.
Get them used to the show first. Go to the show, then after that, And this is what's annoying because the Thunderbirds movie should have been a movie that should have established itself on its own. You don't need the TV show to kind of understand what's going on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, but immediately we're thrown into a situation where, and this is why I argue it should have been a TV movie, because then you could have watched, if you watched the TV show already, you could obviously get into the TV movie, and because in this you would really have to understand that Jeff Tracy founded International Rescue. His brothers obviously operate all the...
his sons.
His sons, sorry, his brothers. His sons operate the crafts, and he has this, Lady Penelope as this, agent of International Rescue, and there's all this other stuff that you kind of need to do some homework on before you watch this movie.
Yeah, you do.
And the only reason I probably got enjoyment out of it is because, at least in the first time that I watched it, is because I was a massive fan of Thunderbirds, and I was probably 6 or 7 years old. Mm-hmm. But looking back at it now, as someone who's going into now approaching his 40s, I've got to be honest, it's as a movie, and as someone who's also done film studies, on top of that, no longer kind of see, move away from my childhood fascination over Thunderbirds and International Rescue. I've got to be honest with you, this movie sort of kind of feels weak.
It does feel weak.
Yeah.
Again, as somebody who just is jumping into this for the first time, it has a lot of structural problems, and I think that if you are going to jump into this as your first introduction to Thunderbirds, it's going to be pretty confusing. There's so many characters to get yourself introduced to. There's a massive plot line involving with a long history of international rescue that you have no idea about. And yeah, I mean, you're just thrust in with a lot of dialogue, and then oh my gosh, there's action all of a sudden. So yeah, I think that you need to ease yourself in by watching the show before you watch the movie. So yeah, I think this is a case where the movie feels like homework if you're going to be jumping into this head on.
Yeah, I just feel like, there was better stories to tell, I think, when it's National Rescue. For example, what happened to their mom? That could have been grounds for a movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, usually with these kind of stories, for some reason, none of these Super Mario Nation shows answer whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. But there was more epic stories I think they could probably have told, or even better, they could have sent Alan Tracy onto Mars maybe, and he would have had to fight on his own amongst the Martians, and then they could have told the standalone story maybe of that. I don't know, but I just felt that there was better ways to do it. Yeah, so I mean, at least they give a little bit of an introduction to the Hood. He gets his foot caught in in one of the mechanisms, and then you see him pull his mask off, and he's like, "Oh my god, it's the Hood!" And then besides that, you don't really hear from him again.
Yeah,
that. No hypnotizing Kiranu, no setting up another trap for international rescue, not attempting to try and figure out how Thunderbird 1 works. None of that.
No interactions with Mr. X. No continuing.
Well, General X was, just he was just a character in an episode.
Yeah,
really.
but okay, yeah, fair enough. But yeah, exactly. I mean, you would think that for the main villain of the entire series, he would have gotten a much stronger focus on.
Yeah, he should have been the main villain of the movie.
But he's not.
Why not? It would have made sense if International Rescue didn't have the Hood to begin with, and they just had to put in a bad guy, and Thunderbirds as a villain. That would have been grounds for a movie. But we've already known that the Hood's been the villain since the very beginning. So, it would have been... Yeah, that's another thing. Maybe they could have gone more into the backstory between Kiranu and the Hood. That could have been grounds for a movie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we knew that they were brothers, but that's...
We don't know what the story is behind it.
No, we don't.
By the way, I'm sure there's going to be people out there who are going to say, read this comic, read this book, listen to this audio drama. I get that, but we are talking about, the shows that we grew up with, and not all the external material that came of that. So, apologies to all the Thunderbirds fans who said, we don't understand what's going on, because we've only just watched the show and we've only just watched the movies. We haven't got involved into anything else yet.
No, we haven't.
The funny other, it's like advertising Terror to the Stars again. So I might actually get that audiobook and listen to that. So
yeah, for sure.
You never know.
Yeah. All right, so yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have too much thoughts about the movie. I just thought it was a massive disappointment.
I thought so, yeah. I mean, if we had to score it, I mean, as we do with some of these movies, I mean, it's a 6 out of 10 for me.
Yeah,
it's just
6.
There's just so much more they could have done with it. Don't get me wrong, some of the action scenes and some of the really impressive Zero X stuff, that's really cool to watch. But unfortunately, the rest of the movie is just it's just either Alan pouting because he can't do this, that, and the other, and then he has this weird dream sequence with Lady Penelope, and it kind of looks like they're in a relationship. They're trying to insinuate that Alan has a crush on Lady Penelope, which is kind of weird because obviously he's been kind of crushing on Tintin a little bit, really, but then obviously doesn't. That's strange.
Yeah.
And it's I could kind of understand if anybody who's really versed in Thunderbirds then watches this movie and says, that was a bit lame.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be too surprised. So.
Anyway, but yeah, so that concludes our discussion of Thunderbirds Are Go. So now next time we're gonna really talk about Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons.
Well, actually, no, we can't talk about that yet because we need to talk about Thunderbird 6.
Well, no, because Thunderbird 6 came out after Captain Scarlet.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
so
then.
yeah, we'll talk about Captain Scarlet and then we'll talk about Thunderbird 6 before we go over to Joe 90. So that's where the situation's gonna be for next time.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye.